How do I resist chocolate cravings? Never seen this before in my life. This is mad difficult. I find myself repeatedly binging on chocolate. It's gotten to 4 days per week. What do I do? Thoughts. So, understanding how to beat chocolate is kind of a compliment. First of all, if you crave chocolate, it's a compliment to your life, because usually the smartest people are chocolate lovers, and not just because of the sugar, but because of the way your brain reacts to the antioxidants in chocolate and the caffeine, which is why chocolate bars are a lot more addictive than something like jelly beans or stuff that you get that's just plain sugar. The effect isn't the same. So it's a good thing. They say the alcoholic always knows where in the house the alcohol is, and a thinker or a brainiac knows where the chocolate is. It kind of makes sense. Chess players and monks and others really love their chocolate too. But back to the question, how do you beat a chocolate addiction? You beat it by seeing the cycle. So in terms of whether or not you're eating chocolate is healthy, whether or not you know it spikes your blood sugar, those are things you already know. Don't appeal to things you already know, because you already know it. You don't need to think about the fact that it's unhealthy to binge on chocolate. You already know that. Instead, see the cycle. Now, this brings up biases, just like politics and whatever else. It's a bias. But with those biases, the question becomes, should I be biased that way? Maybe you are close with your mother and your father, maybe you're not. But regardless, you have an incentive to determine whether or not you should be biased against them or not. With chocolate, it's not like that. You can choose to be biased. So you can look at chocolate and say, I see how addictive this is. So when I say see the cycle, that's exactly what I'm saying. You want to see the fact that chocolate will always lead you down the more hungry path. So it's like a time machine. When you've eaten, you eat chocolate, and then you say, well, now every time I eat this chocolate, I'm going to want it again. And the next time will be even greater. So basically, chocolate is a medication. It is something that next time will make you explosively hungry. And when you see it with that bend, you see the futility of it. That's the power of seeing through things. So I'm not attracted to it anymore. Yes, it's attractive. Peanut butter is attractive, man. The Reese's are attractive. But when I see that package, the first thing Joe sees is I'm going to have to eat this again, and it will never be satisfying unless I eat so much that I throw up. That's a losing deal. Now, there's convincing yourself of that, and then there's just conditioning yourself to see that. Once you see the first thing, you don't need to convince yourself of anything. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. So if you want to break, and this works with any addiction, if you look with crack or cocaine or any of these horrible drugs, you realize that, oh, I know that's death for me, because it's going to put me on the street again. It's going to start the cycle over. So you look at it and you see that cycle. So that's how you break the addiction. You say, hey, this is great. How about we get more of it? Because you know that's what's going to happen. It reminds me of the story in the Bible in Numbers 31 of the quail. It's kind of a really funny story, because the people of Israel started murmuring and saying, we remember the days when we were in Egypt and we ate bread to the full, and we ate all of garlic and leeks and onions and all of this good stuff. We want to go back to Egypt. So God got mad at them and said, you want quail? I'll give you quail. And God sent so much quail that it was something on the order of like 557 million boxcars, Union Pacific sized boxcars of quail, so much that it filled up 38 inches all over the ground for miles. Whether or not that really happened, that's another thing. But it illustrates the point. That's how you have to think in your mind in terms of an addiction. You have to have more of it. So when you get chocolate, especially if you buy it and you bring it home, you're going to keep that stuff around for days. You're prolonging your fasting. You're putting it off. As soon as you go out and you splurge on something you like, that's one 24-hour period at least. If not 2 or 3 days, if you buy a package, you're going to want to eat on that for a couple days because you're probably not going to finish it all in one setting. That means you're going to, if not gain weight, you're not going to lose weight for that number of days. And every day, you're going to make exponentially harder to lose weight. So when you see that, as opposed to convince yourself of it, you can make recovery. So now if I'm in the store and I see chocolate, rare is the day that I allow myself to ever have it, because I'm seeing the addictive qualities of it. First, the thing you see first is a thing you remember. Now, apply that to a jury. The first argument you hear, you often believe. And courts have confronted that with trials. They've realized that the first lawyer who starts talking often convinces a jury because it's much more fatiguing mentally to have to go through a series of arguments as opposed to just hearing one and saying, yeah, he seems like he was guilty, he had a record, rather than really dissecting all of the components in the case. So, if you want to quit chocolate, see the cycle. The cycles in life are everywhere. And if you have wisdom, then this should appeal to you. Look at the wisdom of our society. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men. Weak men create hard times. Hard times create strong men. Now we're back to the beginning. And it's a cycle. And I've said this before, and it's a separate video. Societies are born stoic and die Epicurean. And that means they're not celebrating when they start. They're cutting their teeth. It's like starting a business. Now, my point is not just to motivate you, because motivation runs out. Like luck, like being around people that are encouraging to be around, it runs out. The wisdom is what I want to leave you with. See the cycle. When you look at something you want, you see the cycle. And I'll give you one final illustration before we close today. When Kayla was young, she kept begging me for a pool. She said, I want a pool in the backyard. I want you to put in a nice big 24-foot swimming pool. And I said, no, you don't want it. And she said, yes, I do. I said, no, you don't want it. Now, Kayla, like me, can be lazy on select things. So finally, to convince her, I took her to the pool, which I typically sometimes do. And I took her on a day one time when the guy was having to clean. And I said, Michaela, here's what you're going to have to do every day when you own a pool. You get up in the morning. In the summer, you have to go strain it because leaves have fallen in it. And then you have to take this little yellow device, yellow clear thing, and pH test the water because you make sure the chlorine levels are right. Because if you don't put chlorine, it's going to get it's going to get algae. And when she spent time around the guy who treats our neighborhood pool, she suddenly realized she didn't want to. And I got her a little, at the time, baby pool, and the baby pool would always get leaves in it. And I said, do you want to clean that every day? Something 24 foot by 8 foot. And she realized the point, and she said, thanks for that. Because when she saw the addiction to the pool, the first thing she saw was the work involved to maintain it. It's easier to go to a public pool where they pay, you get community fees gathered together, and they pay a guy to come out and do that. That's a perfect example in my mind about how to do it. So when you look at your food, if you can simplify the process, you see the things you don't like first. That's the advantage of a bias. A bias can work for you rather than against you. See the addiction, see the futility, see the fact that you're just prolonging your success, and you will find the motivation you need to beat any addiction.